I'm an immigration consultant. I'm registered with the Immigration Advice Authority. I'm currently based in Somerset in the UK, and I do a lot online. So you may see my activity on LinkedIn. I primarily work with the points-based system, so things like the student, graduate, work, and business-based routes. And that's me. Thank you for having me.
All right, no, thank you so much. And just thinking of the dependents of skilled workers, especially, I know there are some key requirements like proof of relationship, which is probably the basic requirement for a dependent partner. Um, there's always a guidance available in Home Office, but there are always practical situations whereby Home Office may just reject your application. So, any thoughts on that?
Well, what I tend to recommend is generally providing at least 2 years of relationship history, so that can take form of a timeline. So stating the key facts, for example, where did you meet? When did you start a relationship? Are there any other key milestones along your journey? So, for example, it could be meeting your partner's family. It could be traveling together. It could be moving, it could be moving to the UK together, as I have with some clients. They both decide to move to the UK to study, and then eventually one of them gets a skilled
Mhm.
worker and then wants to apply as a dependent at that point.
Mhm.
So things that you can include. Um, Strong evidence would be shared financial responsibility. So being able, evidence of sending each other money or having shared commitments, for example, if both of your names are on a tenancy agreement
Mhm.
or a mortgage agreement, that sort of thing. And then for anybody who may have been living long distance, hasn't had a long distance relationship,
Mhm.
things like evidence of ongoing communication. So that could be WhatsApp chats, that could be call logs, that could be evidence of going to visit one another from time to
Mhm.
time. All of these things can help provide a strong case that the relationship is genuine and also subsisting, which is basically means it's ongoing. It's still ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the marriage certificate is not like solid proof. In many countries, can be forged easily. So Home Office Alliance is not on that. But just thinking of the perspective of India and Pakistan, especially, whereby arranged marriage is still a thing and it's quite common, whereby
Yeah,
partners will not know each other maybe for 2 years. So how does it work out with Home Office?
yeah. So what I would tend to advise there is again fully disclosing, so explaining the nature of how the relationship came together, um, and also bringing in the other details and facts. So, for example, if there was an arrangement between the parents of each party to the marriage, for example, you could also include things like written statements from them explaining the situation, and of course a marriage certificate. So a legal marriage certificate is one thing, obviously, that you can prove that it's a legal marriage. But in that particular case, you could also have evidence from family members, and you would be able to, of course, be able to prove and corroborate that their parents through the applicant's birth certificates, for example. So the people giving the evidence, speaking about arranging a marriage, you can see in government documents that it is actually their parents,
Mm.
and all of these things can tie together to help provide a strong case.
Yeah, I guess we have to write it properly then, explain it properly, and not getting any sort of doubt in the mind of Home Office. Oh, cool. I think that's probably the major one, I guess. Other comments are quite simple, but proof of relationship does fail the application sometimes, and it's quite a critical one. Um, any final thoughts on this skill worker before we wrap this up?
So one big one that I think people need to be aware of if they're dependents of skilled worker is when the main applicant comes to ILR. So there's been lots of people have made lots of mistakes with this where they're filling out the wrong application form. So there's two scenarios. One is where you're applying at the same time. You need to be applying if you're eligible. So if you've had that 5 years as a dependent and you meet the other eligibility requirements, like I mentioned, you would need to apply for ILR as what's called a PBS, a points-based system
Yeah.
dependent. So you'd fill in that particular application form and you could do that at the same time as your partner. Now, sometimes the case is, for example, if someone gets their skilled worker visa and their partner joins them later, then of course the partner uh, qualifies for ILR first.
Yeah.
And their visa expiry date matches the main applicant. And so when the main applicant is eligible for ILR and they make that application, the partner's visa is running out, but maybe they have another year, or even it might just be 6 months or 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, you must make sure, if you're in that particular situation, that you make an application to extend your visa as a skilled worker dependent
Yeah.
and not as the partner of a British or ILR person, because that's a different route. So you've got the
Mhm.
skilled worker and skilled worker dependent here, and then you've got the family route, which
Okay.
is generally speaking is the partner of a British or ILR person. And they're completely different routes, and they're different routes to ILR. So what would happen is if you filled up that wrong form, it could reset your clock to ILR. So make sure that you extend your visa as a skilled worker dependent partner. And then, of course, once you reach your eligibility point on the 5 years, then you can apply for ILR as a PBS dependent, as previously mentioned.
That's a fair point. I'm exactly in the situation. I have to apply for renewal of my wife's dependent visa. And I guess there's a section apply within UK as within the skilled worker section itself, apply within UK for dependent. And I have to go on that and not like, the other way around. I mean, this is definitely where people mess up. I've heard people resetting the clock.
Oh yeah, it's so common. It's difficult. Yeah, it's really difficult. So it's really important that people know that. And the same principle applies for global talent or innovator founder, because global talent innovator founder, there's a couple of routes within those visas where the main applicant can qualify in 3 years for ILR. However, the dependents still have to have completed 5 years as a dependent for ILR. So in those particular situations, even if they started at the same time, they would still have to extend their visa before they could apply for ILR later.
No, thank you so much for that. Definitely insightful, and anybody watching.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.